like to call or text us and stay active with what's going on. There is a lot going on. Some news on the 911 tape from Lloyd Austin's. That was interesting. Lloyd Austin's pickup by the ambulance. They wanted the lights and the sirens silenced so that they could keep it quiet. It started earlier in that episode in terms of the cover-up, didn't it? And Stephanie will have more stuff during the daily D.C. rundown here at the bottom of the hour. There was an interesting cold case that was cracked by a YouTuber. Hannah found this, and we'll be talking with Ken Belken. He's an attorney and a Fox legal expert at 7:10. And the Solicitor General of the AG's office will be with us at 8:10 to be talking about some interesting cases that they've had recently about COVID-19 damage and about the FDA abortion pill ban. And then also Caleb Rowden at 7:35. That'll be fun. Caleb will talk to us. I want to get a little prognostication ahead of next week's governor's State of the State speech and see how the Senate session's going so far. It got off to a rocky start. Maybe he can smooth things over.
But apparently on the second day of session, they mentioned our show, and that seemed to be an interview that happened while you guys were down at the governor's prayer breakfast, seemed to stir up some trouble. So I hope that's
what we're here for.
That's right. That's our job, and we're going to do it well. Brian Hauswirth's in, and a little respite from bad weather, but tomorrow another front coming in.
Yeah, that's what we're going to have, Randy. And I just add something real quick here on Stephanie. I'll mention the weather. The interviews, there were two of them that kind of stirred it up down there. The first one was the Mike Bernskatter interview. That stirred it up. And then the second one was when Bill Eigel said he was going to read basically out of the dictionary during the rest of the session. So
it's fair to say that Senator Bernskatter sort of lit the fuse.
He did, and but he was very, very outspoken about it. So
while you're on that, I heard there was all that stuff that they were talking about how people don't read the bill before it's voted on and all that, and that line of argument was coming from the people who read the dictionary. And I'm like, maybe if you spent more time just reading the legislation aloud rather than the dictionary, then people would know what we're voting on. It seems like a win-win.
Some of those bills, though, they put out there have more verbiage in them than the dictionary.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is interesting. No doubt about that. But, yeah, a lot of them listen. As far as weather, we're finally going to be above the freezing mark today. The good news is for Columbia will be about 35 degrees, Jefferson City about 40. Most schools going back, not all. Mexico public schools. Exactly. Except Mexico public schools. Mexico has had so many pipes burst and heating issues, they're not in session today. Columbia is in session, but their headquarters still with a lot of water damage from what happened over there with the pipes bursting. More snow in the forecast tomorrow. We're looking at tomorrow night. I talked to the National Weather Service, looking at a clipper system. Unfortunately, it's going to be very similar to the one we saw on MLK Day. They're saying 1 inch to 1.5 inches possibly in mid-Missouri, with maybe 3 inches off to our east. Let's hope it's about a little bit less than that, because that could cause some problems again. And that'd be Thursday night into overnight.
This has been the most, I think, on the fringe of, how's it going to fall type of a weather pattern for the last couple of weeks. We talked with Tony Lupo about that. You've referenced it, but we've been right on the edge of systems, so it hasn't been working out exactly as people thought, because we're right there on the tilting.
And in this one, we're going to be on the far western edge, so that's exactly right. And that's why I think it's very important that people, don't say they blow the forecast. They haven't.
No.
It's just we're right on the edge, and they're very, very, very close. I mean,
the other night it was bad. Right at commute terrible time, evening drive. It was coming down, and people were sliding around, and that was a surprise.
It was a surprise because the Public Works was caught off guard as well. So was MoDOT, because we were only supposed to get a dusting. Monday and again, evening. They were basing their response on a forecast, but it was more than a dusting. It was up to 2 inches.
Brian, are you hungry this morning? Stephanie, you hungry?
Yes.
Yeah. Hannah, I don't think you have your oatmeal that looks like putty.
I stuck with a bar this
morning.
morning.
John, you probably didn't catch breakfast this morning, did you? I wanted to help you with that.
I have the official liquid breakfast of champions right here.
Well, but you know what? I like to promote healthy eating, and so does Kamala Harris. She was talking to the South Carolina women's basketball team, and I thought that you might enjoy a little bit of her word salad this morning.
When the people are in these stands watching you, be they parents or students or kids, you're lifting them up. When people are out here saying, oh, or they're saying, yay, or they're saying all of the things that they say in response to the game, You're lifting them up with a sense of joy about being a part of a community. And we need that.
What is with Kamala Harris? This woman can say so little in so many words. I've never, ever heard any. This is a skill set that's unparalleled in political history.
It's like when I was trying to stretch word counts when I was in college.
That's it. I was trying to think, what does this remind me of? And that's what it is.
Yeah. A Hannah the Producer research paper where I was out of things to say and I just needed to stretch that word count.
She's talking to basketball ladies. She should be an inspirational. Wow, you women are really going for it. I loved watching you practice. I can't wait to see the game tonight. You go get them. Well, it's the joy of the community, and they're going, ooh and ah. What is she talking about?
Yeah, and she's talking just about the audience. Like, what about all you've achieved to play collegiate basketball and how hard you work and how you're in, great fitness and all this? She alone is reason not to vote for Joe Biden.
That is the scary thing. You're right. And if
what about the Gamecocks fans? We can think back, Brian, to a number of years ago when the Missouri women got spit on by the Gamecocks fans.
Allegedly, yeah, that was allegedly.
Listen to this guy, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Well, because as I recall, there was actually a lawsuit. It was pretty sensitive. There was a lawsuit. I don't want to get into it, but yeah, John will remember it, but not about the spitting, but about something else that happened down there. But the national media is portraying that the vice president addressed a basketball team, and some of them that don't really know much about basketball, she was addressing a basketball team. That basketball team is the number one team in the country. A Hall of Fame coach, Dawn Staley. They were 15-0 when they beat Missouri. I don't know what the record is now. It's probably 17-0, but they are, they're really good. Of course, Staley's got her critics. You obviously referenced the incident at Colonial Life Arena, but I mean they're very good. I don't know what. I'm not sure.
If she had her head on straight, she would have said, you know what, you women are exactly the reason that we need laws against men who want to identify as women playing in women's sports, and why do we need to protect Title IX? If she had her act together.
She would never say that. But yeah, I mean, and just like the lesson to women that you exist to please others. I mean, that's the message of her. Hey, everyone watching you gets so much joy. I mean, that is a frightening message to tell the young women.
I didn't think of it that way.
And
I would think of it as far as the performative aspect of basketball. And any sport, you're out there to provide a product, but so you're thinking of it in terms of a subservient role for women.
Yeah, and kind of a people-pleasing. Like the best thing about you reaching the pinnacle of your collegiate basketball career is that the crowd goes ooh and ah when you play your game.
Yeah, and again, where's the president? I would think he would be the one that would be going down to South Carolina and not the vice president. That's something. And think back to 4 years ago. Bernie Sanders was in the driver's seat. Bernie Sanders, and he still has a lot of support within the parts of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders does, but he'd done very well. Bernie Sanders in Iowa, New Hampshire, things look strong, and it was South Carolina that was really basically saved Joe Biden. During that campaign. So I would think that he would be the one that would be down there and not the vice president.
I don't know. I just thought it was fascinating. I mean, these things, on the afternoon show, we used to play Biden Bites and Kamala Bites, and that's exactly what was on my mind with that. So, producer Hannah, tell us more about this YouTuber story. We're going to be talking with this Fox News expert at 7:10. This is an interesting story about a Missouri cold case. I don't know, maybe I heard about it and forgot about it, but a little bit of the background.
Yeah, so this is not the first case that we've seen recently where, a social media star ends up helping law enforcement solve a case. So we're going to be talking to Ken Belken. He's an attorney and a Fox legal expert, because there was a YouTuber who cracked a cold case out of Gasconade County. A Missouri veteran had been missing for over a decade, and a YouTuber helped crack the case. So I'm really looking forward to that interview because I am a true crime nerd, as Stephanie would say.
I can tell. I can tell you have a little penchant for some of these macabre cases, because this had to do with like an artificial hip that they found. I don't know. Maybe we should save this for Halloween time. I don't know.
But I mean, you're right, Hannah. I mean, those TikTokers, they are all over the Kohlberger murder. I mean, they were digging around and found all sorts. I mean, it's been a frequent trend as of late.
Well, and, after I listened to the Wake Up Mid-Missouri podcast on the 93.9 The Eagle or News Radio KWOS app every day, there are several true crime podcasts that I like to listen to. And I don't know why they're so entertaining and so fascinating. Maybe I am just, a little weird like that.
A little?
A little.
We'll have that discussion later.
Okay.
That's okay.
But there's something that it sucks you in, and I listen pretty much every day to some type of true crime.
And I want all of you to plan to pull off the road if you're driving. Pull off the road, or if you've arrived at the office at 6:35. I want you. There's going to be a little audience participation thing here, and it may be a little personality predictor inventory. There's a study out about that, and so you'll need to get your hands off the wheel. So we don't want you driving. But at 6:35, we're going to have a little medical story, and it's going to dovetail into a very important political discussion that will be ongoing until November. When we come back, the Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell. I'm going to try to stay on time today, Hannah, if it's the last thing I do.
Okay, Randy.
You're listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
And here he is, and they're like slapping each other's backs. And Vivek's like, I'm back, and this is our guy. And like, you're like, all right.
Talk about bipolar. I'm sorry.
Mean, it's. I mean, he's always been a Trump guy, and we knew that. But I mean, it got kind of a little bit crazy this weekend when he was telling people what he was telling voters. Hey, if you vote for Trump, if you really support Trump, you got to vote for me. And then the people didn't come out and vote for him. He realized he was going to lose, and now he is fully aboard the Trump train. Interesting to see. Obviously, that VP pick is hanging out there, and there are a lot of. If Trump's elected, he'll have a lot of other picks. And it's been kind of thought all along that Vivek wasn't in it really for the presidency, but something else. And he looks primed right now, as long as he stays by Trump's side to get pretty much whatever he wants. I think.
Well, in that interview that he did, the town hall that Trump did, he said he was considering the other people running. So, I mean, they were in the running, he said. I don't know. Maybe it was just him shooting from
stage with Meatball Ron, only if Trump is there. I don't need to debate Ron. I want to go against Trump. And Trump, of course, is not showing up. So that would, if Nikki's out and Trump's out, that would have left Ron DeSantis all by his low
talking to himself.
How do you come in third and say it's a two-person race? I don't, and you're the other person.
That's a good question.
Can we circle back to Meatball Ron?
Yeah.
What?
That's like a nickname that people have given him. I think Trump calls him that, doesn't he?
I mean, it sounds like a Trump nickname.
Well, I think the problem with Nikki Haley, I think she had two speeches. I think she had one if she came in third and one if she came in second. I think she grabbed the wrong one. That's what I'm sticking with.
I think that was 5-inch heels, Nikki. Just she's throwing the Hail Mary pass. I mean, she's not going to. The only person she's going to debate is Trump or Biden, she says.
She has no other options at this point. All right, we did get an update yesterday out of the Senate. They advanced this two-part bifurcated stopgap bill to avoid a government shutdown. It now heads over to the House. Of course, the Conservative Freedom Caucus people, whatever those people are super mad. They've been super mad for a while. They ousted their speaker, got another speaker who did basically exactly what the first speaker was going to do. So we'll see how that plays out. But of course, that deadline looms on Friday. And then also, the Supreme Court is set to hear a pair of cases today that are really, really important. And they get at Chevron deference. You probably heard a lot about that as these cases approach. But it has to do with the power of federal agencies and whether the court will defer
down a rabbit hole that is just inextricable. So I want everyone to get in a place. If you're driving, get in a place where you can. Well, I guess you could drive with one hand, but then you need to look at your other hand.
Eyes on the road.
There's a new study out with Canadian researchers. John, this could be dangerous there, but I want you to do it.
Okay.
Hold your hand out with your palm flat and tell me if your ring finger...
Wait. This isn't one of those, like, if your hand is bigger than your face, you're stupid. And then you're going to slap my hand and make me hit myself in the face,
No, this
right?
is a legit. This is a study in the journal. Here, I'll tell you the journal this is from. Talk about a guy who's got nothing to do, right? I'm looking up. This is the Journal of Psychiatric Research.
That sounds made up.
Peer-reviewed. No. This is published by those who brought you the Babylon Bee. No, it's true.
Okay.
So take a look at your palm, at your fingers, and tell me if your ring finger is longer than your index finger. Or looked at the other way, is your index finger shorter than your ring finger?
This is going to be quite the screen grab for the Facebook page
That's called the 2D to 4D ratio. And they find that there's a statistically higher likelihood that among individuals with amphetamine use disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and basically psychopathic disorders, people that have what's called the dark triad. The dark triad, which is Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy.
The people Hannah listened to about on her true crime podcast.
Now, and it's interesting, and it's been pretty much proven that those who have a longer fourth finger had more fetal testosterone exposure, intrauterine, and in fact, males tend to have that. Well, where do we see most of our psychopathic behavior?
Males.
Oh, that's true.
Machiavellian behavior was not by a woman named Machiavelli, right?
Right.
So this is in the Journal of Psychiatric Research.
So what you're saying, you might be a serial killer if your ring finger is super long.
The paper noted that people who score high on that dark triad scale have also scored high on mental toughness and sports performance, but on various also types of negative psychosocial and psychological, including intolerance of uncertainty, anxiety, and interpersonal manipulation. Now, what's the definition? I'm going somewhere with this. Stick with me.
We don't want to get out of hand.
Stick with me. So all of you out there. I'm proud to confirm that my index finger is longer than my fourth finger.
I can confirm fact.
Okay?
I'm clear as well. What about you, John?
John, come clean.
On index and fourth finger, they look about exactly the same.
Oh, listen to this. Yeah, you probably vote for Nikki
Get out
Haley,
the tape
too.
measure.
Okay, and so if you just look at a little search on Machiavellian, it's scheming, unscrupulous, especially in politics. Now, we're going to post this on, you want to post this on the Facebook page? I have a picture on the Notion page. Take a look. I have a picture of of former President Donald Trump and, guess what? Melania, with their hands over their hearts. And as best I can tell, Donald Trump's fourth finger is significantly longer than his second finger.
I don't see it that way.
Well, come on.
I think
his ring finger is much longer than his pointer finger. Yes. Draw a line across there. Yes. Stephanie, you're the referee. Look at that.
I think it does look pretty long.
I'm telling you.
But his hand is like angled out. It's not straight.
I don't know.
We're gonna have to do more research.
Ladies and gentlemen, my point is, I'm gonna bring this home. I'm gonna bring this home even more. Here's what Donald Trump said.
Oh boy.
Here's what Donald Trump. Now look, and there seems to be this absolute avalanche. Everyone's caving in. Donald Trump is it. DeSantis, Haley, stop it. Wall Street Journal says DeSantis, get out. Haley, they love Haley. Okay. Mm-hmm. But everyone else, Laura Ingraham, who was a DeSantis supporter, is now saying, go for Trump. So here's a little Donald Trump on Tuesday night.
The people in Iowa see what they...
Sorry, here it is.
It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. That's practically never been like this. It's just so important.
And here's a little more.
Congratulate Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. We're all having a good time together. And I think they both actually did very well. We're going to come together.
Come together.
We're going to...
Conciliatory.
Drill, baby, drill, right away.
It's very different from when he lost the Iowa caucus and gave a speech.
Okay, so that's Donald Trump when he's a winner. But he can be a sore winner as well, right? And so here's now Donald Trump. It was yesterday evening, I believe. And I'm going to pop this up for you and take a listen to this. If I can find it
Very
here.
substantially. You don't need that. We don't want Nikki Haley is a disaster. She worked for me for a long time. I mean, I know it very well. I actually put her there for a different reason. I shouldn't say this.
This is what we're used to hearing.
You had a lieutenant governor named Henry McMaster who was fantastic. I figured if I took her out of South Carolina governorship, put her someplace, any place, I put her someplace, then Henry McMaster, who was my friend and who's turned out to be a great governor in South Carolina, Henry McMaster would become the governor. So I moved her to the United Nations. And honestly, she was not a good negotiator.
Machiavellian behavior, ring finger longer than index finger, scheming, unscrupulous, especially in politics. I make my case, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, he's strategic. I want to get back.
Strategic?
Strategery.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted his friend to be governor, and he said, I can help you out by moving this gal around. Why not?
Oh,
did you hear?
Look, suddenly Stephanie's not a feminist anymore.
No, I am a feminist. I mean, I don't care if she's
a bus.
I don't care if she's a gal or a guy. If she was a guy, I mean, he got what he wanted.
He swept her off into oblivion at the United Nations, where everyone hates, so he could. I mean, come on, talk about a.
I don't think he's a serial killer. But I
didn't say he was a serial killer. But I see some psychopathy there.
I have been keeping a list of people who I do think are serial killers.
Uh-oh.
Present company included.
People who keep their shoes in the freezer. We've already established that one. Number one.
People who sleep with socks on is my big one.
People who do a full flight with no electronics, like they just sit there.
Oh, come on.
That's freaky. Like, what are you doing? I don't know. I can't. I recently heard a podcast and people are like, yeah, I run marathons and I listen to audiobooks.
Well, what's wrong with that? Don't you listen to audiobooks?
If I'm running, I need pump me up music. I'm not listening to nonfiction audiobooks.
If I'm running, you should also run because we're screwed and we're in trouble.
That is crazy town. And then also this one I think I'm guilty of too. Like when you purposefully set your clock in your car 7 minutes too fast because you know you need to but you also know that it's 7 minutes fast, so you just force yourself to do the math every day. That is pretty.
So you basically override the protective mechanism that you built in.
Yeah,
that is sick. Yeah,
I'm trying to shake that.
That's
habit.
a neurosis. Yeah,
yeah.
You know what I'm trying to get used to? Being originally from St. Louis, on time was 5 or 10 minutes late. I mean, that's the way I grew up, right?
Having family from St. Louis, I would agree.
And we tried not to do that. But, if you're on time or if you're 5 minutes late, that's absolutely acceptable there. In the rest of Missouri and the rest of the world, if you're later than 15 minutes early, you're late.
Right.
Well, so I struggle with that one, as Hannah well knows.
And you make me nervous.
No, but have I missed the start of the show ever? I've never done that. No.
Not the start of the show.
Well, but sometimes I'm walking through the lobby and someone catches. You know how distractible I am. Get distracted. So what do you think of, John, what do you think of my analysis here? Is there a connection between the ratio of your ring finger to your fourth finger, Donald Trump's excessively long fourth finger, and his behavior? What do you think?
Well, if you go by the parameters spelled out, yeah, definitely. But I don't know how far I buy into this stuff.
Yeah, and that's just like saying, if you've got high cholesterol, you're at a higher risk to have a heart attack earlier. It doesn't mean that you're going to. It just puts you at higher risk.
It's like a horoscope, right? It's
not a done deal. It's not 100% correlation.
I thought when you said hold up your hand, you were going to be like, look at the lines on your hand and see if you see a picture or something.
I'm going to see. We're going to I'm going to check the text during the break, and we're going to see what people have to say.
Travis is weighing in.
Travis is weighing in. Not Travis Fitzwater. No.
Travis, unnamed Travis.
Unnamed Travis. Okay. Can we unpack a little bit more what's in this bipartisan deal and proposed deal? I think we ought to do that when we come back and talk about it.
I think we need to.
Because, these are the things that affect you. I mean, there's a lot better on our automobiles, especially you Tesla owners out there. We're reading reports of Teslas being just stalled at the mega charging stations. And everything.
Yeah, like a robot graveyard.
Yeah.
Did you just say automobiles?
Did I? Yeah. What's wrong?
Well, there was a couple. I saw.
Isn't that what they are? Aren't they automobiles?
I mean, I guess.
John? Back me up here. Aren't they
Sure,
automobiles?
why not?
What would you want me to say?
Vehicles, cars.
I like automobiles. They're automobiles. No?
Well, and I saw some anecdotes on
Henry Ford.
Twitter, and they said there were a couple of problems. Like when it's that cold, people were because everything else was closed. Typically, you go wander around in a store or something. So those things were closed. So people were having to sit in their car trying to charge their car. So a lot of them were running the heater, which was using the energy. So it was taking like twice as long to charge. And then I guess when it's cold, it already takes longer to charge. And then now people are having to pay to charge. So I also saw people saying it is so expensive when it's this cold and you're having to run the heater to try to charge your car up. And so it was not pretty. And then
in cold weather, don't the electric cars have a default on them that they use their own stored electricity to keep the battery warm?
I think that's right. And then, we got a text that people were seeing Teslas here in mid-Mo not faring very well.
And I talked to a fellow the other day, and it really wasn't about this conversation. Somehow it came up. He said, I went from 65 miles a gallon to 48 miles a gallon because it's cold on my Prius. I'm like, wow, I'll take that. What? Why don't we go? Why isn't the push for hybrids as a very long intermediate step to whatever comes next in terms of total all electric? I've never understood it.
That's what, as far as alternative vehicles, you check the numbers with the big car manufacturers. They sell a lot more hybrids than electrics.
It just makes so much common sense.
And I think that's where we're going. And what we're seeing is that the EVs aren't all they're cracked up to be. And we've seen, they're reducing the amount of resources they're spending on those divisions, the big car manufacturers. So I think you're just ahead of your time there, Randy. And I think we're going to see a big resurgence of push toward hybrids because EVs are just, they're not working out.
I think we need more hybrid automobiles. Producer Hannah.
The equivalent of putting the word "the" in front of things that don't need it, like the Facebook, the Twitter.
You're right. Okay, so a little bit of a summary in terms of this bill that was proposed by leaders in the House and the Senate yesterday. When you get McConnell and Schumer and Johnson agreeing on something, everyone's going, oh my gosh, like you said, it's, what we have McCarthy version 2. For those, for people that like the child tax credit, that would be boosted from $1,600 to $2,000 through 2025, and it would be adjusted for inflation as well. So, you could argue that, man, in this time when we need to have more kids, we're not having replacement rate reproduction.
Well, and it's apparently going to be calculated on a per-child basis, so it won't be capped at 15% of earned income. So a lot of people, I think, would like that.
I disagree with the very notion of the government paying for anything. It's a welfare check is what it is. I mean,
universal basic income.
Oh, gosh. Don't even get me started. Increased low-income housing credit. 16 million kids from low-income families will be better off. Reinstated business deductions. So they're throwing crumbs and morsels at everyone. These 3 business deductions were taken away in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts would be restored.
There's that one on R&D, which I know affected a lot of people that were requiring you to deduct that over a 5-year period. So it would scrap that.
So if I form an LLC, well, I have one as my communications company. And can I deduct under this, if it passes, can I deduct prep time for the show?
I don't know why not.
You should counsel your local tax consultant because, of course, our show is not tax advice.
Maybe Henry Block is listening. I'll have to know. He's not my tax consultant. It also allows for continued flexibility for businesses forced to borrow at higher interest rates. I don't know what that means. Immediate expensing for investments in machines, equipment, and vehicles. That's important, too. So that is good, and that would translate to being able to, in this environment where it's very difficult to pay workers what you're supposed to be paying them, at least it would free up some bucks there,
Yeah, you would hope.
Yeah. So that's good. A carve-out for Taiwanese companies. What is that all about?
I don't understand that.
Companies have good lobbyists.
Tax relief for disaster victims. And I believe that I heard that there's some Ukrainian and Israeli and border enforcement stuff in there, too. But it's sort of paltry. It's not big-time money.
No, and we're just kicking the can again. I mean, we're going to, we talked about this before the last deadline, and everyone was like, okay, we're going to give you some extra time since you're new, Speaker, to figure this out. And here we are in January saying, well, we couldn't get it figured out, so we're just going to kick the can back to March and have the same debate.
Yeah. Why can't they? I mean, you would think that rational people, excuse me, that's the end of that discussion.
Right.
Rational people would think exactly what you're saying. Look, guys, we're gonna lock ourselves in the room. I mean, you see this in companies, right? We have a problem. We've got to get a solution to our spending. Okay. And we've got to cut our expenses. We're going to lock ourselves in a room for 2 hours, and we've got to come out with an answer, period. Mm-hmm. They just can't bring themselves to do that in this polarized climate.
No, and I mean, you also think, like, if you're in a company, maybe you offer an incentive as the employer, hey, if you can find a solution that cuts our expenses, you'll get a little piece of it, or you'll get something back that you want, right? And so I think in the negotiation, hey, if you cut here, guess what? We'll give you this border piece. Or if we're able to cut here, and so there's kind of a tit for tat and a trading, but it just doesn't seem like, I mean, we've got of course, the Freedom Caucus who's putting their foot down saying nothing, no more spending and being really hard line. But it almost seems like under Speaker Johnson, we're not getting enough for what, if we're going to spend this much money, then I need commitments on the other side. It doesn't seem like we're getting enough in the negotiation as far as those of us who would love to see less spending.
I'd sure like to hear from Missouri Congressman J.
legal world. I mean, boy, nationally, statewide, locally. I'm Randy Tobler, along with Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Producer Hannah.
Hello.
And John Marsh, staying warm there. How you doing, buddy?
Here, sir. Doing good.
Ken Belken joins us now, an attorney and a Fox legal expert, about a case that I had lost track of or never knew of in the first place. But, man, Ken, welcome to the program. Are you there, Ken? What happened to Ken?
I'm right here.
Hey, there you are. So we were talking earlier about this cold case that a YouTuber solved. More and more we're having like citizen journalism on the one hand and now citizen investigation on the other.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is a great day for my daughter because this makes the case for me allowing her to be a YouTuber all the more stronger. And I've really been pushing back against it. But, I mean, they're doing good work out there. And they did good work for Donald Irwin from your home state.
Yes.
Who stepped out.
Go ahead.
December 29th, 10 years ago, stepped out for a pack of cigarettes and was never heard from again.
And then he vanished just a little bit after Christmas, 2013 in Camdenton, down near the lake, and was last seen in a Hyundai Elantra, it's reported. And then what happened? First of all, how did the YouTuber follow it? And is this like a first for this dude, or is it something that's been,
I think it's the first criminal case he's solved. But James Hinkle, he flies drones. He runs a YouTube channel that does sort of echo radar stuff, finding stuff buried in water and below the ground using drones, which is very, it's a smart little hobby to have. I don't have any hobbies quite that intelligent. But he became obsessed with this case. And as you said, Mr. Irwin had this 2002 Hyundai Elantra that went missing with him, and he discovered it in the lake. And a few days later, they discovered some human remains that they believe are Mr. Irwin's.
And
it's an incredible story.
What's interesting is first of all, the technology is fascinating. I didn't know that there was that much precision to a drone flying over a body of water and what it can detect. I mean, how can you tell the difference from an otter or a big bass or someone's artificial hip, which what came to light in this case?
Well, look, James Hinkle was not just your amateur drone enthusiast. I mean, this guy was clearly obsessed with this hobby, obsessed with this case, and he probably spared no expense when it came to his equipment because it's a remarkable feat that he accomplished that law enforcement could not accomplish. One man with a drone and a YouTube channel.
What's cool, though, too, is, if you think about it from the human interest part of this story, that man's family, Mr. Irwin was a Navy veteran, and like you say, vanished a decade ago. The family, like, whatever happened? What an emptiness, what a vacancy in your mind for all of that time. So to bring some closure to it had to be good. Now, the question is, can they ever in any way solve the crime as far as the who done it, or is that just a lost cause?
Well, look, obviously, as a criminal defense attorney, I could tell you it doesn't get better with time. The body is decomposed. There's all sorts of decay in the car. Apparently, a 2002 Hyundai Elantra does not hold up well 10 years underwater. Who would have thought? But they couldn't even determine the color of the car at that point. So it's going to be tough. I think they're speculating that it was suicide. Yeah. But look, at least, as you said, the family gets some closure here.
Yeah, and there is speculation.
They can have a funeral.
Well, that's exactly right. And I appreciate you're doing a great job of kind of explaining this. It is a terrible case. There was speculation it was suicide. It's really the southern part of our listening area, but I remember the case very closely. What struck me, though, if it was suicide, and who knows, we'll find out. The reports at the time indicated that he didn't take his wallet, he didn't take his wheelchair, or he didn't take his glasses. So that I found odd. Did you find that odd?
Yeah, I think that's indicative of that he wasn't planning on coming back or going anywhere where he was going to need those things. It's very sad. It's sad that this happens to our military veterans. They see horrible things during the course of their service to this nation.
I also would point out that Hinkle, searched caves. He searched quarries, Tonka State Park, which is the state park not far from Old Kinderhook. I mean, that is a very rugged area if people have any idea where that is. It's very remote. This is... It was a big deal. And his gift card, there was also a report I read that he had $14 on a gift card he was going to use to buy cigarettes. The card was never used. So we'll see what happens on that. But it was just a very sad case.
And it's a story of persistence, too. The guy, Mr. Hinkle, had been at this search for quite a while. But as the case neared its 10th anniversary, he just went back at it. He says, you get up the next day, you schedule another time to go out and look. You never give up. Sounds like Churchill. Never, never, never give up. And you never lose. So it's a story of persistence and resilience. And like I say, it's really sort of a feel-good story with a bit of a macabre twist.
I'd say so.
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch and see if anything comes. Maybe you'll have to defend if there is a criminal involved. Maybe you can defend that person. I don't know how you will, but we'll keep tabs on it.
I don't know how they can afford me. Fly me down.
Yeah, well, and when you send Hannah the bill for this interview, I don't know, that may break the bank. We may have to close the show. But anyway.
No, you guys are pro bono. Are pro bono.
Lovely. Hey, thank you so much. All right. Hey, we really appreciate it, Ken Belken. Talk to you again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. There
Have
he
a good
is.
morning.
Hey, that's
and here's a
great
picture
stuff.
of the car. Irwin's car was pulled out of a small pond near Camdenton. And it's all moss, algae covered, and man, what a sad story.
I think it's important to point out that the guy Hinkle, he wasn't just your average guy who went down to the big box store and bought a drone. I mean, he even went back out on the pond in a kayak that he had sonar equipment on that could go out there, and that's how they confirmed the car in the center of that little bitty pond down.
Yeah, a lot of
pretty
experience, high tech, and it's expensive equipment to say the least, but. Hopefully they'll get some closures. And Randy, that's the speculation right now that maybe he committed suicide, but we're going to defer to the authorities on that. They'll have to investigate that. It's been so many years ago. But it's worth mentioning. People don't think about it much, but we have some cases in mid-Missouri. John and I have covered many over the years that have never been solved. People who have been missing. And it's for those families, they don't get a lot of closure. I can remember the Sherry Montague case here in Columbia that John and I reported on, and she ended up being found murdered over in Osage County, east of Jefferson City. There's another case that our listeners in Moberly might remember. It was in 1994. It was a woman named Hazel Hess. And she disappeared. They found blood in her apartment, was never found, still never found, even though they drained a couple of lakes. And they had a couple leads several years ago, never have found her either. Those are just two that immediately come to mind. There's more than that. But, and the guy, I'm trying to think of his name. His name was Bell, Mr. Bell, up north of Columbia between, not related to
no
you, but
relation.
no relation. But it was just a terrible speculation was he may have even been murdered, but they've never found his body. Just some terrible, terrible cases.
Yeah, awful.
Lately, I've been hearing from people that I know that are like, well, didn't you see so-and-so post this on Facebook? And I'm like, no. I have no idea what you're talking about, and I don't care. And we have so many people, I think, locally who spend and nationally who spend a lot of their time on social media, and they're criticized, and I'm criticizing them here. But this guy, takes social media and does something positive. So when we think about hobbies, if you're a person who has a lot of extra time, such that you spend a lot of your time commenting on Facebook, maybe this would be if we got more people with this guy's kind of dedication to solving local crimes. I mean, that I would consider a good positive outcome of time spent with social media and with technology.
And as John was saying, I mean, this guy, he outfitted his kayak with sonar gear. He's also a rescue scuba diver.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy is serious. I mean, he's no Al Franken on Saturday Night Live with the antenna hat. This guy's the real deal.
What was that show with the spies living among us, the Americans, or what was that show? And they were living a regular. What was that?
Oh yeah, with the Russian agents who were the deep plants.
And so how do we know that this guy isn't he's like, I'm just a YouTuber, and you're like, really? You seem to have some sophisticated equipment.
Well, what about the Greg Jones case in Cole County, Brian? That goes back to the early 1990s, and it was just a few years ago that Chris Nemeth was charged with that crime, and that one's sort of still up in the air. But that was a very high-profile case where a 14-year-old disappeared out at Russellville, and now they're talking about this guy potentially being charged with being his classmate and was the one who killed him.
And owned the Golden Corral. I mean, a huge case. He posted that suspect, by the way, posted a $1 million bond, actually wrote a $1 million check. Posted bond. I mean, if you've got that kind of money you can post it. But as I recall, I'm going from memory on that. But the thing that John, the other case I remember, there was a guy down on, and the brother of the high-profile woman in Jeff City. She runs a special learning center, and I don't think they've ever found him. He was last seen at the Country Kitchen in Jefferson City, probably, I'm trying to think. And he was seen saying he was going to go meet someone at the Lake of the Ozarks and never found him. And they reopened the case about a year ago, and they've never found him, to the best of my knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah.
Terrible.
Debbie Hamler's brother.
Well, it's a heartwarming story, again, with, certainly the genesis was not pleasant, but Mr. Irwin's sister said it was the best. They got notice of this find on Christmas Eve, just this last Christmas Eve, and she said it was the best Christmas ever, just knowing that I can finally lay my brother to rest. So Mr. Irwin was a Navy veteran, and Mr. Hinkle brought him home. That's great.
And his channel's Echo Divers. Echo Divers. But no,
and that case
fantastic.
Brian was talking about was Doug Brooks of Jefferson City
Doug Brooks.
in the 90s.
That was just terrible.
How many open cases are there in Columbia and Jefferson City area, roughly? We talking a dozen, 5, handful?
Right off the top of my head, Bell would be one. I mean, I'm just trying to think of any other that are missing, that haven't been found. I mean, Heithold's still technically an open case, but obviously that's a little different. But Bell would be one in Jefferson City. Brooks would be one in. So
that's missing. But if you take on,
are we talking
the
about
unsolved murders?
Unsolved, quite
a couple dozen.
Yeah, many. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there've been other people too.
Yeah, and
obviously James Hundle was murdered here in Columbia.
Those detectives are working tirelessly to try to solve those. So again, what is that number in case people do have some kind of what is the tips number? Just
573-875-TIPS.
Yep.
It's the Columbia number 573-875-TIPS.
Right.
Your identity will be protected. But James Hundle, who was a high-ranking executive at Mizzou, they've still never found his killer.
All right. Well, boy, great news and a great job by Mr. Hinkle. Coming up, what's hot with Hannah? We'll see what's up her sleeve, literally, in just a minute. to many.
Many never thought you could do it. I won't name names.
Oh, no.
Many thought it was impossible.
It's very possible. What's up your sleeve today?
Well, literally up my sleeve today. I've posted a little photo on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page. But I did something kind of exciting last night. I got my first tattoo.
What?
Wow.
I know,
this
right?
This is monumental. This is an epic moment on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Old lady Hannah, who never takes any risks or anything like that, I got a tattoo. And Stephanie was telling me yesterday that she was shocked that I was doing this.
I'm completely shocked. I'm more shocked that yesterday you were still asking me what you should get. And I'm like, you have an appointment today to go and you're going to permanently put something on your body and you haven't decided yet and it's like hours away.
It wasn't so much what I wanted to get, it was where I wanted to put it.
I don't know. You were showing me various drawings. I was nervous for you. It's beautiful, though.
I presented the tattoo artist with several options and he kind of helped me narrow down what was going to be the best option. But I've posted a photo on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, and I knew way before, the husband and I got married that I would be tattooing my maiden name somewhere on my body, right? Just because that was my last name for 23 years, and as excited as I was to become an Embry officially and legally, it was about 2 weeks before the wedding. It hit me. I was running a press conference here at the radio station, late at night by myself, and my brain just went, wait a second. We're going to be leaving behind the only last name we've ever had. And it made me a little sad. I shed a couple tears over that just because it's a big thing to change your last name. And leave it behind. So I knew I wanted to get the tattoo. My little brother, who's not so little, he ended up doing a tattoo with me, and we got Adkisson, my maiden name, tattooed in my dad's handwriting. And then I grew up hearing "I love you to the moon and back," and so I added a crescent moon, which also represents new beginnings. Apparently, some website told me so it's probably true.
New
right?
moon or something, yeah.
And then some stars, which my mom actually drew one of the stars. So
that's really neat.
Yeah. It looks kind of gross right now because it's got the Sanoderm stuff on the top of it.
How was the experience overall in terms of discomfort? Was it better, worse, more than, about what you expected?
So it's on my forearm, and I thought that was like a cushiony enough place that it wasn't going to hurt. It was uncomfortable. It wasn't terrible. I didn't cry or anything like that, but
now when you flex your wrist, does that make the stars twinkle?
But I've also asked on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, do you have any tattoos that you might regret? I know when I was in college, I lived in an apartment for 2 years with 3 other girls, and one night when I came home, one of the girls met me in the parking lot, and she had just left the tattoo shop, and she had an astronaut on her rear end.
Oh.
Because the astronaut was landing on the moon.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my.
Well, there you go.
Well, I think we better put see that. Weather's going to turn a little south tomorrow, so we'll be following that as the day and tomorrow progresses. And we move our thoughts towards state politics and an already rousing start to the Senate as Senator Caleb Rowden, who's, of course, the president pro tem of the Missouri Senate, joins us now. How you doing, Senator Rowden? Welcome to the program.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Do you have your full armor on as you walk into the Capitol building every day?
I got a heavy coat on. I know that for sure.
Things got off to quite an interesting start. And our show was actually mentioned, I guess, the first day of the Senate. When things were cut short. Senator Bernstetter threw a little barb, and then Senator Eigel gave it back to him, and then some. And I mean, boy, we're off to a wild and woolly start. Your thoughts?
Well, I think we kind of expected this. I kind of assumed the arc of the session would be a lot of talking, bloviating, you might call it, at the beginning, and then a little bit of just kind of normal get to the work of the Senate type stuff. We referred a bunch of bills 2 weeks ago and last week. A lot of committee hearings happening now, so we've kind of moved off of the ebb of kind of grandstanding, and now we're going to do some business, and then I think you'll hit another ebb or flow, however you see it. Sometime here coming up when we start talking about stuff on the floor. I don't think it's. I think we all saw it coming. I don't think it was a surprise to many people who were paying attention.
Senator, you were on the air just the other day on This Week in Missouri Politics with Scott Vaughn and a whole bunch of folks. You didn't pull any punches when I think they asked you what you thought was going to happen at the Capitol this year. You weren't too darn optimistic.
Well, I think I'm funny. Funny thing is, I'm probably more optimistic than most. I'm a generally kind of glass half full kind of guy, but it's going to take more work and a little more. Kind of suppression of political urges, I think maybe is the best way to put it. Everybody knows a bunch of people are running for office. It's an election year. Some folks, the platform that they have in the building, because of their lack of monetary resources in a campaign, is going to be, kind of their main way to get their message out. So we all know that's real and kind of a part of the equation. I don't think that means we can't accomplish things. I've said all along with the majority of the Republican caucus and then the small minority of the now Freedom Caucus, we agree on a lot of stuff. We disagree on more the method of how to get to the end result, or, maybe sometimes we disagree on what we think is possible. What's the win that we can take now to move, the needle a little bit further? Those are the things we disagree on. We generally don't disagree on policy. So, if we get past the arguing for its own sake, then I do think we have a chance. Otherwise, I think you're right, John. It could be a tough session.
Senator Caleb Rowden joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Dr. Tobler, thank you, Senator. We appreciate your time. I know you've got a lot of issues that are on the table in the Missouri State Senate. One of your bills that was just filed not too long ago was in response to Secretary Ashcroft being swatted. And that investigation, by the way, is continuing by the Jefferson City Police Department. Under current law, the offense of making a terrorist threat in the second degree is a Class E felony. Your bill adds private residence to places a person can call in a terrorist threat, and then the offense would be a Class D felony, if you will. Are you optimistic on that? And I'd like to get your thoughts too on the fact that our Secretary of State was swatted at his home.
Yeah, I think I'm optimistic. As much as you can be. I wouldn't assume that anybody just generally disagrees with the idea. Now, we've seen it happen both in the political context, Republicans and Democrats. We've seen it happen outside of the political context with just, sometimes malicious intent and sometimes non-malicious intent, but also can end up being, incredibly problematic for the person that it's happening to or the family that it's happening to. So I think it starts, I kind of generally kind of segment bills and their chances into, does it have a bunch of opposition? Does it have some opposition? Does it not have any? I don't think this one has any. It's just a matter of finding the path, to get it done, and probably generally speaking inside of a larger, kind of public safety package. The question about Secretary Ashcroft, it's something that's happened. I think it's happening more frequently, maybe not so in Missouri politically, but it's happening other places. We've seen a number of reports with members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats. I think it's a new tactic that's designed to kind of gin up or maybe bring fear in certain situations. It's bad. I mean, it's really bad. I had an issue. It wasn't a swatting issue, but we had people, that have come to our house numerous times, with political motivations, and it's never fun. It's never easy to deal with, especially for folks like myself and the secretary that have kids. So we got to find a way to nip it in the bud. We got to find a way to tell folks, hey, there's different ways to express your political angst that doesn't involve. One, involving law enforcement, and two, potentially putting the lives of folks at risk. And
if I could just follow up on that real quick, you're saying that this bill, you're optimistic because there's no opposition. Probably if it passes, I'm assuming for your comments, it would be a larger part of a larger bill, not a standalone bill. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, just the nature of the building. We had a big public safety bill that got vetoed last year because of one small thing, and so Senator Luetkemeyer, who's the chair of judiciary on our side, Representative Lane Roberts actually has filed, and we talked last week, has filed anti-swatting legislation for a number of years and had a hard time getting out of the House. So we're going to try to put a little more muscle behind that. I think again, it's not a matter of people disagreeing with the concept. It's just, getting enough people excited about it to put it higher up in the priority list and get it across the finish line.
Now, the real meat of the work of the Senate right now is happening in the hearing rooms and in committee work. And yesterday we got a preview on our show over the KC landfill issue. And there was a big hearing yesterday. So wanting to get your reactions from any colleagues or your reaction to that hearing yesterday. And then I believe Parents' Bill of Rights is coming up in an education committee today. Again, where are you at on that educational freedom, and then are these issues that you see getting to the floor and getting across the finish line?
Yeah, landfill is an interesting issue. Kind of popped up unexpectedly last year. For anybody that doesn't know, it's landfill is being built near residential development, or is proposed to be built. Obviously, the folks in that residential development are a little fired up. I don't know the outlook for that. It'll get to the floor. I can probably say that with certainty. The outlook for it when it gets to the floor, it's a tough issue. The folks, the developers, and the folks that are on the side of wanting to get that thing done would say it's already started. It really is not the role of government to step in, halfway through or whatever the percentage is through the process and change the rules midway through the game. So it's an interesting issue because it has Republicans and Democrats who support it, and I think probably Republicans and Democrats who oppose it. So we'll see. Education is my kind of signature issue. The thing I personally, which I don't get to be passionate about much, but I am passionate about that. We'll vote out, and we'll bring into the floor this week a bill that would expand ESA statewide, potentially a more universal school choice bill. Both of those things got voted out, are getting voted out this week. The Parents' Bill of Rights is something that we passed last year out of the Senate. Got a little bit of there was some devil in the details issues with with what the House thought was appropriate. So I think all of those things kind of fall into a similar category of just finding more ways to empower parents to have more choices and to have more information relative to their kids' education. I think all that's good. I think anybody who doesn't think that's good is probably fighting a losing battle in today's day and age. But hopefully we can get something done relative to educational freedom.
That's Senator Caleb Rowden, President Pro Tem of the Missouri Senate. I have to ask you about next week's State of the State speech from the governor. What are you hoping to hear?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're going to hear a lot of what you've always heard from Governor Parson, which is, and I think, the workforce development infrastructure has been the has been the resounding message since he came into office, almost 6 years ago now. I think he'll tie up some loose ends. I think he wants to finish strong, as do I, with some things that we've focused on. So I think you'll hear some similar themes. I think I'd like to hear a plan and an opportunity to make sure that we're not growing the state budget tremendously this year. I think I think it's a fine budget year. I think there's more money coming in, which is never a bad thing, but I think we are going to have some lean years coming in the next couple of years. And so I do think, planning for that as this executive goes out and another executive comes in, could be coming in and a new Senate and new Senate leadership and, all of that that layover that happens in the Senate and in the legislature because of term limits. I think setting ourselves up well for the next 3 or 4 years, I think is really, really important, because I do think we have some really good opportunities if we do things well, but I think we can also shoot ourselves in the foot if we're not thinking long term. So this governor, I think, has done generally a good job of that, making sure that one-time money is getting used for one-time things and really focusing on things that he thinks important. So I think you'll hear similar themes, which I think is fine and certainly, kind of fits the theme and the MO for Governor Parson.
So switching over to the Secretary of State's race, yesterday was a big fundraising deadline, and it seems as though your candidate committee and Hoskins' candidate committee are kind of neck and neck, although your PAC has more money than his. Obviously, we've got Shane Scholler in that race and Adam Schwadron. They don't have nearly as much money, and in these types of races, especially statewide, we've heard from other guests that fundraising is important. I think one analysis I saw this morning kind of took a shot at you, saying, that I think the expectation was that maybe you would have outraised some of these other folks by now. So what's your response to that? And then, is this race shaping up to be a two-way race between you and Senator Hoskins?
Yeah, well, we raised, this quarter I got in, I officially got in in the middle of October, which really, left me with about 45 days to fundraise because of Christmas. We outraised everybody else in this quarter 3-1, I think, if my math is close to right. So, we'll have PAC money. I think more of that will be coming, and you'll see that as session winds down. I think we have other vehicles and mechanisms that we're going to raise money to and spend money out of. So, I think we'll have plenty of money. That's never been a concern of mine. I don't know that it's a two-way race. Shane Scholler is a formidable guy and a nice guy, someone who's done well down in Greene County. So I don't have anything bad to say about Shane. He's going to have to figure out a way to raise some money, and if he doesn't, probably won't be able to be viable. But it's still early. Filing hasn't happened yet. Things could shift even between now and the end of February when all this starts out. So we're just going to keep our head down and keep doing what we think's right and raise some money in the process.
Well, Senator Caleb Rowden, it promises to be a real turbulent session, and we hope that you will have, as usual, your hands steadily at the helm, trying to guide this ship of the Senate and the general session at large. We look forward to talking with you as things progress. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks, guys.
All right. There he is, Senator Caleb Rowden.
It was an interesting interview. I want to mention one other thing that's interesting about Senator Rowden. He chairs gubernatorial appointments. At 10:30 this morning, Robert Nodell and Paula Nicholson will go before his committee. Now, that may surprise most of our audience. Why would they have to go before the Senate to be confirmed?
For what position?
Well, Robert Nodell's the director of social services and Paula is the director of health. But technically, they've been in the interim.
Right, they've been interim.
Interim. Well, Paula for more than that, but they will go for Senate confirmation today. So I think that's a big deal
to slip into the chair permanently.
Space.com. Astronauts report that space leaves a funky smell on their spacesuits. Astronauts who have returned from spacewalks say their suits have strong smells like burnt steak or even gunpowder and ozone. Talked to an astronaut who was on the International Space Station. She said it smelled like, you might imagine, toilet smells, dirty clothes, burnt toast, and raspberries.
Delicious.
And they say the chemical makeup detected on Uranus shows that it most likely smells like farts or rotten eggs, and they also believe it might smell like urine because Uranus and Neptune have ammonia ice in the clouds, so that would go along with the stinky rotting egg smell. So one more reason to go into space, and now you know the rest of that story.
You know, I would just like to point out that Randy started laughing about the Uranus joke before I did. Okay? I get a bad rap on the show for having my head in the gutter.
There's an old Star Wars joke there, Star Trek joke, right? Yeah.
This is like Organic Chemistry 101 with John
Pretty
Marsh.
much.
This is great.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I understand the ozone.
Don't mix the acids and the bases.
No, do not mix your acids and your bases. You could end up with an explosion. So it's interesting. You talked about the ozone smell, which it sounds like there's some people are discerning some, basically technical, electrical kind of stuff. And on the other hand, it's just good old. I'm wearing the same old underwear for the last 2 weeks kind of a smell.
That's pretty much what they do because they don't have any laundry facilities on the ISS. It's sort of like you just put it in a Ziploc and put it in the corner and hope it doesn't stink, huh?
You'd think they'd maybe debacterialize it. Well, that still wouldn't change the organic chemistry of it, but you could run it through like a UV treatment, and at least sanitize it that way. I wonder if they do any of that. I don't know.
Well, I think they just take a change of clothes and call it even.
Wow.
I was going to say, does sanitizing something remove the smell?
No, but I mean, at least from an infectious standpoint,
Yeah.
and the bacteria interacting with skin things are probably, that has a lot to do with what generates the smell. is Missouri's Solicitor General, Josh Devine. Now, Mr. Devine, got to ask you, there were Boone County listeners here who might get confused. You're not the Judge Devine in Boone County. You're the Josh Devine from Solicitor General in A.G. Bailey's office, right?
That's right. Hey, thanks for having me on. I get this a lot. I had twins who were born up in Boone County back in 2018, and everybody kept asking me how my race for judge was going, and I had to keep explaining to them I'm the different Josh Devine.
I know. Hey, we wanted to. You've been in the chair now, for about a year or so, and there's several big cases coming up. Not the least of which is, and you're working on, is the FDA abortion pill.
That's right. This is a case that really, the Attorney General Bailey is pro-life. I'm pro-life. But this is really a case that if you're pro-life, if you're pro-choice, it doesn't matter. Everybody should be really concerned about what's going on here. This is a situation where the Obama administration and the Biden administration, they curtailed a lot of the safety precautions that used to protect women with respect to the abortion drug. And the abortion drug is widely recognized as much more likely to land a woman in the ER than a surgical abortion. And so this case is really just about putting those safety precautions back in place.
Now, I want to zoom out because while I have you, I mean, you're really an appellate law expert. You spent some time in D.C., and there's some important cases getting argued before the Supreme Court today on Chevron deference. And I know the Attorney General is constantly working on separation of powers issues and fighting back against the administrative state. What does that case, or I guess it's a pair of cases, mean? The ones that are before the Supreme Court today?
Yes, so there are two cases before the Supreme Court today on what's called Chevron deference. Now, I spent a year at the Supreme Court. I worked for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who famously got his legal start here in the Attorney General's office in Missouri. And one of the things I saw while I was clerking on the Supreme Court was just the effect that the agencies have in a lot of these cases. There are a whole bunch of cases where federal agencies are a party. And what the Chevron case basically says is that if there's any kind of ambiguity in the text of the statute, then you defer to the federal government. You put a thumb on the scale in favor of the federal government. And what we've seen in the past, 40 years since that case was decided, is this has basically helped create a fourth branch of government, an entirely unelected, undemocratic branch of government that's really not accountable to the American people. And I think the Supreme Court's got a real chance to overturn that case and return things back to the text and the laws that govern the American people.
Now, back to your work in particular, last week you all chalked up a big win. I remember when the case against China was first filed, there were a lot of folks on Twitter who kind of took it unseriously and were joking around like, haha, Missouri sues China. But the court, dealt you a big win last week in that case.
Yeah, that's right. It is really difficult to sue a country. You have to fit your lawsuit into sort of a very narrow exception in this federal law. But the Court of Appeals last week determined that we did so. And if you remember, think back 4 years ago, China knew about COVID for weeks, for months before the rest of the world did. And what they did is that they used that time to purchase the world's supply of gowns and hand sanitizer. And, I remember going on Amazon and you'd see hand sanitizer with $100 a bottle. And so then when we got here, one of the very first appeals that Attorney General Bailey's office conducted, the very first appeal that I argued as Solicitor General was this case against the Chinese government. And I remember, thinking back to law school, I never thought that as a lawyer I would stand up in court and take on the Chinese Communist Party. But that was a really neat opportunity to be able to do that as my first appeal as Solicitor General. And of course, we got the big win last week that says we can in fact sue the Chinese government, and we look forward to pressing that case further.
Now, what else are you then watching for here? What's going to be the next big case out of the Attorney General's office? We heard, we were kind of jokingly talking about, I guess the Highway Administration's telling transportation agencies that they can't have any humorous signs. But it just seems like every day the Biden administration is overreaching. So what's the next big project?
Well, we've got a lot of irons in the fire. One case that I'm really looking forward to is this border wall lawsuit that we brought against Secretary Mayorkas and the Biden administration. And this suit is really just about a basic principle. If you're the president of the United States, you have to follow the law. And one law that Congress passed a couple years ago was a law that expressly required the federal government to build a wall on the southern border. And then Joe Biden comes in day one of office, and he just said he's not going to do it. He issued a statement saying, I'm not going to build the border wall. The problem is, of course, that the law expressly says that he has to do it. And this is in fact a big reversal from his previous policies. Everybody knows that walls work. Joe Biden, Barack Obama in 2006, they voted for an act in Congress to require the federal government to build the wall. And then he reversed stance in 2021. We went to court, and we went and sued them and said, hey, no, you actually have to follow the law. You actually have to build the wall on the southern border. And that's all briefed up in the district court. We finished our briefing schedule last month, and we are eagerly anticipating the ruling from the court on that case.
We're talking with Missouri's Solicitor General, Josh Devine, this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Josh, gosh, I guess it was a year ago when the abortion activists filed the lawsuit against Missouri's pro-life law, after the Dobbs decision, and the courts ruled in favor of the AG. Do you think, though, that whole discussion or challenge could come back?
Yeah, I mean, we're still in active litigation in that case. I'd say that this is, in fact, maybe the third or fourth case that we've seen along this same kind of this, what I might call a novel legal theory from the other side. It was first brought by an organization, believe it or not, they called themselves the Satanic Temple. They sued us when I was working for then Attorney General Josh Hawley, and they said, hey, abortion laws that protect, babies and women, those are a violation of the separation of church and state. And we won that twice under the Hawley administration. The newest plaintiffs have brought the same kind of lawsuit, and we've chalked up a number of wins in that case, and we look forward to ultimately prevailing there as well.
Now, you talked about your time in the Attorney General's office with Josh Hawley, but, as the solicitor, you're kind of over a lot of the policy type. You're over, you're the main arguer, main attorney for the Attorney General, but talk about the difference that state solicitors have in their role should Trump be elected. Should you have a Republican president? Does that change the solicitor's role at all?
Well, it doesn't fundamentally change the kind of work that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. I think what it means is we would go a lot more on defense rather than offense. I mean, right now, a big part of my day, probably half the time I spend every day, is pushing back against federal government overreach. The types of cases that we've seen where, the administration, the federal government just isn't really interested in following the law. And I think we would see something different in the Trump administration. We saw something different the last Trump administration. And I think we would be in a situation where we'd be defending the federal government's rollback of some of these unlawful regulations that the current administration has imposed.
Would you be willing to share with us any of the things that might be just on the horizon that you're thinking about, things that keep you up at night but haven't yet been filed? You're writing those briefs as we speak?
Well, one thing I'm really excited about is the Supreme Court case that we have that the Supreme Court's going to hear in March. We're working very eagerly on our brief in Missouri against Biden. This is the free speech case where we uncovered reams of evidence of the federal government pressuring and coercing big tech companies like Facebook and Google to take down speech for millions of Americans. And here the district court made express fact findings based on over 20,000 pages of evidence that the federal government was doing this. They were doing it with respect to all the major social media companies, and it had harmed, millions and millions of Americans had been affected. So our brief is due in that case in a couple of weeks. We are hard at work on it. I can't preview anything that we're going to say in the brief right now because we're still working on it. But let me tell you what the drafts that I've seen so far in our team and the work that I have drafted myself in this case, I'm really excited about our brief.
Give us a little behind the quill pen. I'm sure you use a quill pen, don't you? Just like no. Give us a little view. How does this work when you are collaborating with other AG offices around the country? Because they're usually filed as one document, isn't it? Or do you all file separate briefs? Just for us non-lawyers in the crowd.
Yeah, we usually file one document, and it's a busy job trying to fight back against federal government overreach. And so what we've done is we've figured out this strategy where, we will partner up with Louisiana or Utah or Texas or Ohio or whatever states. And that allows us to expand our resources. Typically what we'll do is we'll send drafts around. We might divide things where, I'm drafting a brief right now that we're going to file next week with Ohio. And, we drafted some of it, Ohio drafted some of it, and then we edited it together. And this really just expands our resources and enables us to do so much more than we could if we just worked by ourselves.
That's good. Thanks for some of the behind-the-scenes view. I mean, a lot of us see what the final product, but it's interesting to learn, how the sausage making is done from your point of view. Thanks for sharing with us all the multiple fronts that you're working on to defend our Constitution. When we come back, what's going on with You can have a wide berth to tell us all the good news. What's up?
Well, the market closed down yesterday.
Oh, thank you. Oh, great.
And it's in the red pretty significantly this morning. Dow is almost at 0.5% down. NASDAQ approaching 0.75% down, and S&P right there in the middle. So maybe not the good news you were hoping for today, Randy.
I heard what's driving that was one of the Fed people said that they're going to not so quick on thinking we're going to lower rates.
Well, there's some other stocks that are significantly down today, and that's because a federal judge yesterday put the kibosh on a big merger, and the judge actually and the DOJ alleged in their lawsuit that this acquisition would eliminate about half of the all ultra low cost airline seats in the industry.
Ooh.
And we can't talk about JetBlue and Spirit Airlines without the infamous John Crist audio that I think Hannah has up for us.
This is how a comedian's brain works. This will sum it up perfectly. I was on a Spirit Airlines flight, and there was like a medical emergency. You know when they come on, they're like, is there a doctor on board? And everybody was panicking, and I was just like... I go, there's no doctor on a Spirit Airlines flight.
And if you haven't seen that whole bit, it gets better. And so it's very good. But so Spirit is known as one of the low cost airlines, and they were set to merge with JetBlue. The deal was a $3.8 billion deal.
Wow.
The Biden administration hasn't had much luck on their antitrust push, but the DOJ, they did win at least initially this lawsuit yesterday. And so the proposed merger was essentially, it would have created the fifth largest airline in America. And the two smaller airlines were saying, look, we can't compete with these big guys. I think the antitrust folks JetBlue was trying to do kind of like a deal, a partnership with American Airlines, and they put that to bed. And they said, in order to compete, we really have to have this merger. And what the court found was, it's going to raise rates like crazy, give consumers less options. And so they put the end to it.
Spirit's value just tanked on the market, didn't it?
That's right. Spirit shares plunged after the ruling, ended the day down 47%?
Wow.
And JetBlue stock gained 5%. Is that a typo? It might be meant to be 4.7. I'm going to have to do a fact check there on this Wall Street Journal article.
Well, the Biden administration's general theme has been to try to really enforce antitrust legislation and to try to, take advantage of that. In a way, it's pro-competition. Now, free marketers would say, no, let monopolies be monopolies, and, they'll eventually get top-heavy and, overburden people, and a competitor will come in. I'm not so sure I believe that.
And 47% is right. I think they opened yesterday around 15, and they were down somewhere around 8 at one point, and even lower than that at one point.
Buying opportunity.
And they said, I just pulled it up, said they were tumbled another 20% ahead of the bell this morning.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, well, I mean, if you're looking for cheap flights...
the Bear Fare, isn't that Spirit?
Well, an American, or not American, but Alaska, after their incident, I heard their tickets were actually pretty affordable in the weeks following. So it'll be interesting as the Biden administration continues their antitrust push, and then again as we're looking toward potentially a Trump presidency, what that might mean in the antitrust space.
So there's some news just breaking about retail sales in December topping expectations. The spending spree by American consumers goes on.
Retail sales rise by more than 0.5% in December. I'm actually surprised by that. But again, I would want to balance that out with how much of that was actually paid in cash and how much of that is on credit. And so what I've seen from financial analysts is, people are still spending like crazy because they have their head in the sand and they're in denial. But what we're seeing more and more people racking up incredible amounts of debt, and more people, they're spending like crazy, which means they are not doing any sort of saving or investing, which I think anecdotally, I think is probably right.
Won't that drive sympathy towards Democrat progressive governments, my nanny people who are going to promise redistribution, plunder one group of people to give to you so you can keep on spending? That's, I think, going to become an emerging theme with the Biden and the Democrat campaign. Pretty sure.
And it's a how many people they want to force to have EVs. I mean, if we're having all of these problems with such a small percentage of people who have EVs, think about if 50% of the population had an EV, what those charging stations would look like. I mean, we would just be stuck at home. And,
Well, we shouldn't be. I mean, with global warming and all, they should be nice and toasty sitting there as they charge you.
Yeah.
It's and yet here you've got practical, intermediate, sustainable, or at least more sustainable than totally combustion engine Prius hybrids, and other companies make other hybrids that make total sense as an intermediate step while we try to figure this out. It just defies me how legislators and policymakers can sit there and look at the reality and ignore it. It just makes no common sense to me whatsoever. Brian Hauswirth joins us now.
It's good to see you.
Tell us about the recall effort on the city councilman. I know that you've been looking at that, and we haven't covered that story this morning.
I think it's a big deal. I really do. It's historical for sure. It's been 33 years, actually more than 33 years, since a Columbia City councilman or woman has been recalled. That was back in 1990. Nick Kanoth is the councilman that we're talking about in the 1st Ward here in Columbia. He was elected in 2023, so he has not been in office a full year yet. He took a job, Randy, with the Missouri Realtors Association after he became a councilman. The recall organizers, it's a woman by the name of Pamela Cooper. Her and her supporters say that this is a conflict of interest. Now, Columbia Buzz, Mike Murphy and Al Germond, you've been on there too. They basically had him on a couple of weeks ago, and I heard him on the show. He says there is no conflict. He says there's no conflict at all. He believes this is, just not correct. Of course, it's going to be up to the voters. So this will be in April. If they recall him, there'll be a vacancy, a short vacancy. If they don't recall him, he will stay in office. And finally, the last councilman to be recalled was Chester Edwards in 1990. And I think there are people probably listening who remember this. The colonies on Forum. I guarantee you, all our listeners have driven down Forum. Dr. Ashley Emmel has an office down on that street. So does Ori Hemme. Nobody even thinks about the colonies anymore. People just think it's there. But when they built the colonies in 1990, it was a huge controversy. People listening will probably remember it if you were alive in the area then. And this councilman, Chester Edwards, backed the colonies. He got voted out of office. Now, there were some people didn't like him in general, but the reality is that was the big issue. As I recall, in 1990, he supported.
What was the problem?
They didn't want it. The people that lived in that area did not want the colonies. Now, what I'm saying is today nobody even thinks about it. But it was a big issue. It really was about growth and development. And but this is a little different. This is about conflict of interest. Now, there have been other efforts to recall council people. So they tried to recall Ginny Chadwick. She resigned. And if you remember, there was an effort to recall Laura Nauser. People might forget that, but there was. Now, that also failed. So this is the first one that's been on the ballot for a while. And we'll see what ultimately will be up to the voters. And Kanoth absolutely says there's no conflict of interest.
On other matters in the Columbia realm, where are we on this sanctuary city for LGBTQ and, deprioritizing that for law enforcement? Should it become an issue?
That is not an issue that is before the council yet. The status is people are asking. There's only one meeting in the Columbia City Council in January, and it was last night. Because of the MLK holiday, they did not meet on January 1st or that week because of the New Year's holiday. That measure that has been proposed by the community, members of the community, a couple of business people, and also some students. It's the Mizzou Democratic Socialists that have proposed that. The Columbia Law Department and also the not just the legal department, but the Human Rights Commission is still reviewing their language on that. Eventually, I do expect it to come up. It is not as of yet. It will have to be. First of all, they talk in that draft ordinance about the Pulse nightclub and stuff that really there's a lot of language that would have to be rewritten in there. And once they do that, it will be proposed. It will be introduced. Then it will be actually voted on. But it did not come up last night. There was, however, about 100 people that showed up at the Columbia City Council meeting calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. So, occasionally you'll see an issue like that. That's kind of an international issue that gets attention. Yeah. but they did, and they want the Columbia Council to actually get involved. They want them to pass a resolution.
573-874-9390. Chris is on the line. Chris, welcome to Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Yeah, is this the dead battery hotline?
Yes, this is it. Yeah. Do you need a charge? Hauswirth will be right out.
Yeah, there you go. This is one of those things that a lot of us foresee being a problem. And, anybody that's had a gasoline car understands that your battery has so much less power in it when it's sitting out in the cold weather. In Alaska and places like that, they actually put battery heater pads you plug into your house under your battery to make sure you got enough battery to start the car, along with all the engine heaters and all that. And I've been on a Facebook page for some time about cars and stuff, and there's a certain group on there. It's always, electric cars are just all over it. And some time back, this was brought up, and they're all throwing out all these stats like, well, an electric car will go out and take off in weather much colder than a gasoline car and blah, blah, blah. But what I got to noticing was almost every person who's all sold and all happy about them, they got a garage to put their car in, which now we know might be dangerous. I only live 5 miles from where I work, okay? And they got a garage. I'm happy. I just drive it 5 miles a day. I'm retired. And I think, common sense tells you, what about all the people that live in apartments that have to park on the street? Mm-hmm. And this is exactly what happens. Yeah. You can't have a charger and a plug-in on every, 10 feet down the street, but they lose gobs of power when they're sitting in cold weather. Yeah, and then the minute you take off, you've got to, like say, have a heater and all that. You're just doomed.
Now, Chris, you said something that caught me. You said you're retired, but you live 5 minutes from work. Help me.
Well,
there's some cognitive dissonance there.
No, I was saying to the people that were chiming in were, I'm retired.
But you're
I only live 5 minutes from work. It was all, and I always have a nice
two different things. Okay.
Put it in.
All
Not
right.
me.
Well, a lot of retired people do work, part-time, or they do volunteer work.
Well, as I joke, I'm self-employed. I have no drive to work. But
all right. Hey, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Next up, Jimmy. How you doing, Jimmy? What's up?
Yeah, hey, I heard the Republican mayors of little towns around here already warming up the buses to send their trans and LGBTQ library reading hour refugees to Columbia.
Well, that's the Abbott maneuver. I see the Abbott gambit there, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be one of the drawbacks, I guess. We better have some housing ready for them.
All right. Hey, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I heard apparently there's some controversy. They don't really know what to do with this building that was historically used down off of Broadway, right?
I've covered it.
Yeah,
in the
you
news.
were covering that, but whether it's going to be a museum or a performance venue or what, who determines and when do they determine?
Okay, the Columbia Council, and this has been if you look at our Facebook page, our listeners, several of them on Facebook are not happy with the purchase. Several of them say it's too much. It costs $1.7 million to purchase a building. They voted for this back in August, so the purchase has already been made. What happened last night is they basically voted to create a 15-member task force. It'll be a mayor's task force. Members haven't been chosen yet, but they're going to be looking at people that are historians, experts in local Columbia Black history. The building is called the McKinney Building. I guarantee our listeners, again, just like Forum, they've driven by it a million times, probably didn't recognize it, but that's what it is. It's McKinney Building. It's 411 East Broadway. It's right next to Plaza Tire. Go down there today. You'll be able to take a look at it. Count Basie actually performed there years ago. There's some in the community that want to see, it's a huge history there in terms of the African-American community here in Columbia. Some would like to see a black business incubator. Others want to see kind of a museum dedicated to black history. Others want to see jazz. Ultimately, it'll really be up to the task force. They'll make a recommendation to Mayor Buffalo, and then it would be up to the city council. So that was the vote last night. But I'm a white guy who used to play in a band that played a lot of Count Basie tunes. Would I be barred from performing there? Can't speak to that. Are we going to? Is this going to be? I mean, is your involvement in this project going to be limited to the melanin in your skin? I mean, is this another project that's going to be, another racially divisive program? I hope not. I hope city fathers and mothers have better thoughts than that. I think in terms of. It hasn't been as controversial as the Facebook comments that I recall in August were kind of concerned about the cost. It was $1.7 million. They tapped into their capital investment fund that they have. They have a lot of different funds. The task force members, Randy, like I said, would include historians, downtown business owners would be involved. They don't say anything. I've read the packet. It's 2 pages. I think I linked to it on our website. And there's nothing in there that says, I think you're asking, can white people participate? There's nothing in there that says anything about that they can't or cannot.
Of course, I'm not implying that, but I mean in terms of the actual boots on the ground, the work done at and in that place, is it going to be limited to black people and celebrating black culture? Can it be people that identified as enjoying and performing black music?
I think I can't.
What's this? Why do we continually have to identify people by their race in the media, in public policy? I've had it with that.
Well, again, and some of our listeners might. I want to challenge you on one thing. When you say in the media, I'm simply reporting.
I'm not talking you.
Okay.
I'm not talking you. The other day, the New York Times talked about this shooter up in Buffalo, that he shot 10 black people. It doesn't matter whether they were black or brown or blue or white. It doesn't matter. He shot 10 people. And we've got to start practicing. I'm not talking about you, Brian.
Sure, I appreciate
the mainstream media at large has got to stop talking about black and white. Just talk about people.
This whole discussion of the McKinney building in Columbia, when I first heard about it, kind of took me back. What was it, Brian? A few years ago, when the city had some controversy when they came up with the bucks to buy the blind Boone home.
Yeah, that was controversial. A little bit about the cost and stuff. This one, Randy, it's not at this point. Let's see what they're going to recommend. I mean, I think that building does have a lot of primarily African American history in it. So we'll see what happens. But
the roots of rock and roll and hip hop and disco and everything is all black musicians. We should celebrate that. Absolutely.
And Count Basie did perform there. You ask about Nick Kanoth, by the way.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, is it and I don't know this. This is going to be up to the voters. Is it a conflict of interest for him to work for the Missouri Realtors? And some would say it is. He says it is not. But he's going out to try to retain a seat, so it is going to be interesting to see that.
And which is kind of funny to me, Brian. We think about Jefferson City's mayor Ron Fitzwater, who's a full-time lobbyist for the Missouri Pharmacy Association. Nobody's gone after him about it,
and nobody said it's a conflict of interest. I assume on it. The rare matters in Jeff City, John, that there'd be a pharmacy issue, he would recuse himself.
Probably.
But this Kanoth is saying that if there is an issue that deals with realtor, he abstains. He doesn't vote. But there's still, there is the petition. They do have the votes to put him on there. It'll be interesting.
Steve's on topic. You have 20 seconds, Steve. We're running late.
Yeah, that building down there that you guys are talking about, I bought my first Stingray bike from there. It was called Foster's Key and Bike Shop. They were the first Schwinn dealer in Columbia.
That's right.
The 50s, 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s.
An iconic name, Schwinn.
Schwinn and Foster, and it was that's exactly right. It was a bike shop, as I recall. It was there maybe 83, 84. It's a long time ago, but it was definitely there in the 80s.
I have a picture of it, and the girls that I went to school with, she had a picture and she sent it to me.
Well, thanks for that. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Yeah. And boy, I'm glad that they're celebrating. home country. I mean, that's my great-great-great-grandfather. I think great-great-grandfather emigrated from there. Along with Scotty Cox from Clear 99, we're going to be heading out there in September, late September, for a 10-day tour with Colette Tours. So we're going to be going to Switzerland, to Salzburg, the birthplace of Mozart. We're going to be visit the Mirabel Gardens, which was featured in The Sound of Music. It'll be a lot of fun.
That trip looks amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I've only been to Europe a couple times, and one of my trips was to to Munich and to Salzburg, and a lot of times my choice is always I will go somewhere different. In order to make my list of I would go back in a heartbeat, it's really tough to get on that list. Those places are on my list. I would go back in a heartbeat. They're beautiful.
When my son was studying in Germany, we dipped down and of course visited some German, Munich and Schwabisch Hall and of course the museums, all the engineering museums in Stuttgart. But then we dipped down and went to the base of the Alps. St. Gallen is my family's home country, right there above a beautiful lake. But it is like being in a postcard. You feel like you're in a postcard when am I right?
It's stunning. And it also feels a lot like home. Like there's rolling hills and green. Like being in Munich felt like a lot like being in Missouri, honestly. But it was stunning.
And for you agricultural types, I mean, this sounds really very in the weeds and in the grass. I couldn't stop talking to the local farmers because we stopped at one of the little eateries on a Sunday afternoon. There, the yodelers were going, and they're farming. I mean, steep grades, no ruts, no erosion. They manicure their pastures there like you manicure your lawn. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, John, you're probably aware of that. I mean, it's
like 19th century farming there. You see how they they take their cattle up in the mountains in the Alps and all, and bring them down in the wintertime and all.
Yeah, come along with Scotty and me, and a bunch of us will be going out there end of September. You can learn more on KWS.com or 939theeagle.com. Stephanie, what's on your plate?
Well, last night at the Board of Aldermen meeting in Ashland, we appointed a permanent police chief. So